Good afternoon, classmates. My name is Natasha Grimes, and I'll be presenting today on the Transformational Leadership Model and utilizing the 360-degree assessment tool is a practical way to integrate transformational leadership model in a corporate leadership development program to enhance executive and managerial team effectiveness and productivity. During this presentation, I'll be examining various pieces of literature. I will be giving a transformational leadership overview, the use of 360-degree assessment tools, and how there's a relationship between using tools of that nature and transformational leadership development. I'll be examining limitations of the studies, which research methodologies were used, implications for the 21st century workforce, and what are some recommendations for future research based on the research conducted. What exactly is 360-degree feedback? It's a process that involves specialized upward feedback which uses a rating system or a questionnaire. Skills may be evaluated by peers, customers, managers, or even themselves. Ratings are done on different aspects and different dimensions. Typically, assessments of a manager's strengths or weakness in a particular area are evaluated. Raters are asked to assess that manager's strength in a particular area potentially, or how often or how frequently they observe a competency or skill, with responses such as always, sometimes, seldom, or never given as an option. The results of a 360-degree feedback system will show a manager how they're seen on each item, which then will reveal how self-evaluations that may have been conducted differ from the evaluations from other raters. We must keep in mind that a 360-degree feedback is multidimensional. Feedback receivers interact with customers, managers, direct reports, and peers all in different ways. The 360-degree feedback tool is an opportunity for the feedback receiver to gain insight as to how those individuals view them. It allows the leader the opportunity to impact their followers by understanding how they are perceived by others, utilizing that information to then become more effective as a transformational leader. Shown here is a sample or an example of a 360-degree feedback questionnaire that was used to rate and provide feedback for my own personal manager at work. She is part of the executive leadership team that's participating in a leadership development program. Part of the program requires feedback from direct reports that will allow them to gain insight as to how others see and view them as managers, which will then allow those leaders in executive positions to make adjustments to change behaviors based on how they are viewed by their direct reports. As you can see here, a variety of questions are asked, basically where I can scale or rate always, all the way down to never, based upon how I view and interact with my manager. Shown here is an overview of transformational leaders. Transformational leaders inspire others to change, and they empower their followers by raising consciousness in individuals to get them to change for not only themselves but the betterment of others. Executive leadership and managers who are highly transformational, they create a culture that empowers team members to be creative and be risk takers without fear of negative consequences. Listed here are the 4 factors of leadership, of transformational leadership. The first one is idealized influence, which involves a leader who has charisma and is a strong role model for their followers. Those individuals typically have high moral standards that they live by. Inspirational motivation, that relates to the leader who has the ability to create team spirit and to motivate by creating a zeal within their team. An example of this could be when a sales manager is trying to help a team meet a sales goal, and they are having Monday morning meetings or pep talks at lunch, things that would excite and cause their followers to have more of a commitment by using an emotional appeal. Intellectual stimulation is the third factor of transformational leadership. These leaders stimulate followers to be creative and innovative. They allow them or encourage them to challenge their own beliefs and to be risk takers and try new approaches and develop new and innovative ways of dealing with organizational issues. Individualized consideration is the fourth factor of transformational leadership. And this represents leaders who provide a supportive climate where they listen to the needs of their followers. These are leaders who pull their followers along with them. Transformational leaders want feedback from their followers and peers, which make a 360-degree feedback a valuable tool to promote growth and change. In addition, transformational leaders, they go beyond the expected results, and they provide results that typically will exceed expectations. And they do this because they are able to motivate their subordinates or direct reports to go beyond what is expected of them. Transformational leaders have broad-based perspectives, and they include a various dimension of leadership process. These individuals are change agents who are good role models. They are able to articulate a clear vision for the organization. They are able to empower their followers to meet higher standards and act in ways that make others want to trust them. And they give meaning to organizational life. In the study that I examined by Mackey, titled Who Sees Change After Leadership Coaching, an analysis of impact by rater level and self-other alignment on multi-source feedback, suggested that there are correlations between increase in transformational leadership and performance outcomes, which include job satisfaction, follower satisfaction, as well as more commitment to the organization. This study listed here transformational leadership and employees' feedback seeking, the mediating role of trust in a leader. This case study investigated the role of transformational leadership in promotion of employees' feedback, the interactions between the leader and the follower. The employee's attitude toward the leader influences employees' responses in a positive manner. Trust allows the follower to be vulnerable. Transformational leaders show support, encouragement, concern, and respect. In recent years, researchers have examined the process by which transformational leadership can influence followers' work outcomes, such as job performance, creativity, and behavior. In these studies, transformational leaders exert their influence by transforming followers' attitudes towards the leader. The method used in this study is examining a tech company in China which worked a flexible work pattern, and they collected data from 388 full-time subordinates. They were able to collect 205 survey responses, and most of those participants had a bachelor's degree. In this method for the survey, packets were provided to supervisors and subordinates. Both completed those, which was voluntary and confidential. The results of the study showed that transformational leadership was supported, suggesting that transformational leadership positively related to trust in the leader. This means that trust in a leader is a motivator to boost feedback-seeking behavior. Again, allowing that follower the opportunity to gain feedback because they do trust what their supervisor is going to provide as far as feedback. Thus, again, encouraging that 360-degree feedback model where it's not just self-evaluation, but because the trust the employee has, they will seek feedback from their leader. The study supports theoretical implications for the supervisor's role in encouraging employees' feedback seeking. And again, identifying trust as a major motivator to support that feedback. Limitations of the study include the fact that it was conducted in a high-tech industry in China. Research would need to be done in other countries and in other industries to further implicate that trust is a motivating factor in seeking feedback. Also, the study was not clear as to whether subordinates provided feedback on leaders, thus reciprocating the feedback, not just the followers seeking feedback from the supervisor. The next study, entitled The Power of the Written Word, Team Assessment of Behavior, is a case study that involved healthcare professionals who work in teams using multi-source feedback. The method was to determine by coding of 50,000 written comments from a variety of assessment methods, and the evaluation was over 1,100 different learners or participants. The results was a combination of multi-source feedback along with self-assessments and guidance with interpreting those results, which helped feedback for recipients. Multi-source feedback could lead to changes at an individual level, but was not conclusive regarding team performance. This study was used to look at engaging in multi-source feedback for training physicians early in their careers with the hopes that it might shape the ability of individuals to give and receive feedback and to function more effectively in teams. Multi-source feedback has been used to assess professionalism and teamwork skills, as well as to help facilitate, and in this case, medical students and practicing physicians to look at their behaviors. Factors that influence the acceptability of the feedback includes rating themselves, the perceived credibility of the raters, and what's the purpose of the rating. And if multi-source feedback is beneficial, why is it not used more often? Some would suggest that it requires more training or proper training in order for the assessment to be effective. There are concerns with how the results from peer assessments will impact those in competitive environments, especially those in the healthcare environment. Limitations of this study is that it included only healthcare professionals. Underreporting of concerns, meaning there was not complete reporting done, lack of details in their feedback because it is written commentary and it was poor quality. So when you get over 50,000 comments that's going to be coded into different categories, it's kind of hard to determine if that feedback is accurate because of lack of details. Peer or junior doctors actually documented fewer concerns, whereas upper level or more experienced doctors and nurses did not participate as much in the study or shared potentially more concerns. However, the study showed little variation in scores or accuracies with those questions regarding the peer or junior doctors and nurses. Another limitation of the study is that it may be irrelevant to the type of interaction between the team members. So, in addition, more research is actually needed to determine the effectiveness of multi-source feedback to performance of teams. This next study I found very interesting because I do work in a remote environment where the company I work for is located in Denver, Colorado, and I reside in Virginia. My manager and the rest of the team that I'm a part of, with the exception of 2 others, are all located at the home office. There are other multiple remote employees who work out of different locations throughout the U.S., but they still have a home office to go to in that location. Whereas myself, I work out of my house without any interaction from the home office. So to understand or to get information about e-leadership and what are some principles that could help guide, even though this study is specifically for nurses, I found that it was relevant and gave relevant information for how managers who lead virtual teams could improve. This study investigates the unique challenges that's faced in this example of the healthcare industry due to more nurse leaders managing aspects of virtual teams. Some nurses are nurse leaders who have multiple locations. They have nurses who are nurse case managers who work remotely. So this article examines those different or looks at different studies that relate to leading virtual teams. What feedback and guiding principles are identified that will assist nurse leaders? There were several guiding principles that were identified in this case study. The method used shows here that Green and Roberts' study provided data based on email surveys sent to 19 virtual groups and included 7 team member interviews. It should be noted here that e-leadership is considered when an individual has to manage a group that they don't see in person. They lead a team that might be dispersed geographically, or they work within a team that might be partially remote. They're part of a virtual workplace. A virtual team consists of members who, again, could be geographically dispersed throughout an area or away from their leader, or both, and they would be considered part of a virtual team. Although, again, this is a nurse or healthcare setting that the study examines, I can definitely relate to this virtual environment because my company, the team that I'm a part of, have individuals who are geographically dispersed in different locations. I'm here in Virginia. We have individuals in Orlando, Canada, Denver. But again, my manager is in the home office. So the results of this study identified 5 major areas of concern that virtual team members provided, which was interesting to me because I could definitely relate to many of the result findings here. The uncertainty of meetings, the lack of timeliness of getting information. Is often assumed that virtual employees or team members know information, forgetting that they're not on site or interacting, they may be missed as far as providing information to them. They are sometimes not knowing the daily issues of the on-site workers, to not have an understanding of when there might be a personal crisis for a team member or some challenges that on-site workers might have that has not been communicated. Meetings scheduled at inconvenient times. Again, if you're an employee such as myself who works on East Coast time and the home office is in Mountain time, oftentimes meetings are scheduled very late. Although it's late for me, it's in the early afternoon, and it's often forgotten that it's inconvenient. And again, managing interface issues, because there are so many different meetings and things that have to be done virtually via whether it's Skype or WebEx, video conferencing. There are times when there are issues with that. So the findings in this study, the results, I could definitely relate to. Leadership skills necessary for effectively leading a virtual team consist of communication, being able to communicate effectively with those virtual team members, decision making, and self-initiative. Integration of virtual team leadership should be a competency included in training and development to improve team member relationships. I find also that it's assumed that the manager ultimately knows how to lead a virtual team, but it would definitely behoove an organization who has team members who are virtual for that manager to have some sort of specific training, managerial training for how to lead a virtual team. And lastly, again, how does a different time zone impact the e-leadership? The time zone differences and language issues become larger because of globalization. What if the team member is not only outside of the state, but what if they're in a different country? Again, could lead to miscommunication. So once again, it's important for leadership development to allow that manager to have the skills and competencies needed to lead a virtual team. As a result of the study, 8 guiding principles were identified. I found these to be rather interesting and could definitely see where, if these were implemented as leadership development training principles, how it would be beneficial. As a virtual employee, again, I can relate to why and how many of these principles are necessary. The first one looks at the e-leader must be able to build trust with team members, which is harder to do when you're not on site or interacting in person with the team member, but it is still definitely important to do. The study also suggested that e-leaders should intentionally establish a virtual presence and should allow team members to be empowered to make decisions based on the team leader's intent. There should be enough of a relationship built that even though that manager or that team leader is not present, the team member has enough empowerment to make decisions because they so understand how the team leader would want things done. Again, the team leader and e-leader need to tend to social and emotional aspects of virtual team members. This can be done by remembering birthdays or having personal conversations outside of just the day-to-day work. The fourth principle is the e-leader should find a way to promote a healthy team with each interaction by coaching followers and establishing a mentoring relationship. They should, again, coach by helping that follower identify additional options to expand their thinking, looking at different possibilities, which is, again, harder to do if you're not in person working with that individual. E-leaders must establish communication norms and how communications will be done. For example, acknowledging receipt of an email, not assuming that an email was received, responding to messages within a certain time period. All of those allow for better communications. E-leaders should provide timely responses and feedback, not allowing distance to impact performance concerns. E-leaders must be sensitive and aware of cultural norms to better manage conflict, evaluate team culture, demographics, and range of skills, as well as team longevity to better manage. Conflict in virtual organizations may be more frequent as the organizational and social boundaries expand due to different professional and cultural diversity. Some limitations of this study were that it was a compilation of multiple studies and journal articles and expert opinions to gather the data rather than one select sample size. Another limitation of this study is that there's currently limited current literature on e-leadership itself. And the study also focused on one specific field, again, healthcare nurses, so it would be interesting to have more of a wide range of fields that have virtual teams and how those team leaders are interacting with their virtual team members, whereas this study was just based on healthcare nurse leadership relationships. And this next study examined who sees change after leadership coaching and analysis of impact by rater level and self-other alignment on multi-source feedback. This case study was designed to investigate the use of multi-source feedback in order to assess the effectiveness of strength-based coaching to enhance leadership models. This study also investigated the effects that self-other rated alignments on leadership outcomes after coaching. So what's the impact of strength-based coaching on the review or the rating of self as well as feedback from other sources? The method used in the study was 6 sessions of leadership coaching took place over a 3-month period, which was provided to a coaching cohort group, which included feedback on their leadership strengths, goal setting, as well as strengths development. Research shows that an over-reliance currently is used of self-reporting measures rather than investigating the impact more broadly on managers and peers and direct reports. Multi-source feedback, or sometimes called 360-degree feedback, it provides the opportunity to examine the impact for this particular study on the impact of executive coaching. The results of the study show that statistically significant increases were shown that participants' transformational leadership behavior occurred after strength-based coaching. Differences were noticed more by individuals in the organizations and the participants themselves. So the self-rating did not necessarily show the increase in leadership behaviors. However, when rated by peers, individuals were documented to have shown more leadership behaviors. Those who were raters that were higher in the organization were found more sensitive or most sensitive to change, and the self-rater alignment resulted in decreased ratings over time for those who overrated themselves. A few discussion points to consider based upon the research show that there was an overuse, or there is typically an overuse of self-report measures for managers. Managers often rate themselves, peers rate themselves. However, the 360-degree feedback, or the multi-source feedback, provides a broader overview of performance, as self-reports are unreliable measures of change. It's often difficult for individuals to really evaluate their own behaviors and changes. Therefore, the use of the 360-degree feedback provides a much more broad viewpoint. The studies also show that significant change took place in regards to transformational leadership behaviors, which occurred after the leadership coaching. Self-ratings by individuals who underrate themselves compared with other ratings, say by their peers or subordinates, they're often very likely critical of themselves, potentially because they are perfectionists, which then will lead to contradictory findings if the self-ratings are contradicting really what the other evaluations are showing for that particular individual. Some of the limitations of the study consist of, first of all, that the cohort was a non-random group. A control group was used to assess the impact of leadership coaching intervention on transformational leadership behaviors. Also, it was a relatively small participant sample group. The group lost over the period of the testing time, over the 3-month period, loss of 15% of the participants due to individuals dropping out of the course. In addition, no concrete analytical technique was able to be used to assess. And in addition, another limitation is that the coaches were pro bono, which could negatively impact the commitment level of the coaches who were providing the leadership training, as well as the quality of the coaching received. The methodology I used to conduct this graduate research project was to utilize various studies that would provide differentiated approaches to
how transformational leadership could be integrated into leadership development programs. 360-degree feedback or multi-source feedback is one tool. The guiding principles for virtual teams that was shared in another study, as well as the strength-based leadership coaching, each of which were practical ways to develop transformational leadership behaviors. By examining each study's methods and the limitations, provided practical ways to corporate leadership development programs, or ways that corporate leadership development programs might enhance their team effectiveness and productivity. As a result of the studies that I evaluated and the research that was done for this graduate research project, I was able to conclude that e-leaders should utilize the guiding principles in order to create cohesive, effective virtual teams. Another conclusion is that utilizing only one mode of feedback, such as self-evaluation, is not as effective as a 360-degree feedback tool, which provides feedback from various individuals connected to the leader. Leadership coaching is another way to develop transformational leaders. And in addition, those who are not necessarily born with natural tendencies of leadership have the propensity, with the proper leadership coaching and feedback, have the ability to become transformational leaders. When thinking about who exactly would be an example of a transformational leader, Martin Luther King Jr. comes to mind as a prime example of a transformational leader who raised the consciousness of others to want to join him in order to be agents of change. In a corporate setting, leaders who are able to inspire their team to go above and beyond are the transformational leaders that followers respond to. Working in a virtual setting, there are challenges that may be faced by e-leaders due to the unique challenges of leading a team remotely. Utilizing those guiding principles outlined in the Cohen study is a practical way to effectively lead virtual teams. There are many unique dynamics facing organizations today, but utilizing tools such as the 360-degree or multi-source feedback is another way to enhance leadership development programs. Meeting those unique needs of a virtual team and incorporating leadership coaching are ways to get positive results from a team that might be desired. This research project provided lots of interesting information. However, there were some recommendations that I would make for future studies, such as having a larger sample size for the 360-degree feedback effectiveness. The sample size in the studies used were quite small populations, and they were also very select populations with the cohort. So to have more individuals in a sample size. Also, it would be interesting to have a study that evaluated the feedback and included the demographics of the population. Also, if multiple opportunities throughout a longer span of time to provide feedback. The study used was only about 3 months, so it would be interesting to see the effect of leadership coaching over a longer period of time. Another idea for a recommendation for a study would be to have a larger scope of industry types. The studies utilized here focused on healthcare and the other was nursing. So to look at different industry types and their effectiveness as far as utilizing the 360-degree feedback, as well as the impact leadership coaching has on different industry. Different leaders and managers have different responsibilities, so how does the coaching impact developing them into transformational leaders? And lastly, what are some organizations that are currently successfully developing transformational leaders as a result of 360-degree feedback tools that they're using, as well as what are some leadership programs and things that are working well would be interesting topics for future studies. That concludes my graduate research project. I appreciate your time. I thank you all for giving me the opportunity to share, and I hope that you have a great rest of your time at Amberton.